Welcome to the channel CoinExa USA. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a fortune in plain sight. And today we're talking about a coin so ordinary that most people would spend it without a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple 1970 Washington quarter, the kind that might be sitting in your car's cup holder right now, could be worth an absolutely staggering $108 million? Yes, you heard that right. $108 million for a quarter that was minted over 5 decades ago. And before we dive deep into this incredible coin, I need you to stick around until the very end, because after we uncover the secrets of this 1970 treasure, we're going to reveal 3 more Washington quarters that are worth even more than this one, including one that could make this $108 million look like pocket change. So buckle up, because your life might be about to change. Now, let's talk about why this 1970 Washington quarter is so phenomenally valuable. And trust me, the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing. The year 1970 was a fascinating time in American numismatics. It was an era when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of quarters for everyday circulation, and the Washington quarter design, which had been in use since 1932, was still going strong, featuring the iconic profile of George Washington on the obverse and that majestic eagle on the reverse. Most people don't realize that during this time, the Mint was churning out these coins at facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and while millions upon millions of regular 1970 quarters were produced, something extraordinary happened that created one of the most sought-after error coins in American history. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. You see, the 1970 Washington quarter that's worth $108 million isn't just any ordinary quarter. It's a coin that features a catastrophic minting error that makes it practically one of a kind. And when I say catastrophic, I mean the kind of error that mint officials would have nightmares about. During the minting process at one of the facilities, something went terribly wrong. The planchets, which are the blank metal discs that get stamped to create coins, were somehow struck with the wrong dies. And not just that, but the striking process itself was flawed in such a way that it created a coin with multiple compounding errors. Imagine this. The coin was struck off-center, meaning the design didn't align properly with the planchet. It was also double-struck, meaning it went through the striking press twice, creating overlapping images that give it a ghostly, almost three-dimensional appearance. And to top it all off, the metal composition itself was wrong because somehow a planchet mint for a completely different denomination made its way into the quarter production line. Now, you might be thinking, how does an error like this even happen? Well, the U.S. Mint operates with incredible precision, but it's still run by humans and machines, and occasionally, very rarely, things go wrong in spectacular fashion. In 1970, during a particularly busy production run, a series of mechanical failures and human oversights created the perfect storm. A planchet that should have been used for a different coin, possibly even a different metal composition, somehow ended up in the quarter production hopper. And when it was struck, not once but twice, with misaligned dies, it created what collectors now call a perfect error storm, a coin so flawed that it became perfect in its rarity. The fascinating thing about this particular error is that it should have been caught during quality control. The U.S. Mint has multiple checkpoints where errors are supposed to be identified and pulled from circulation. But somehow, someway, this coin slipped through every single checkpoint and made it into circulation. And that's what makes it so incredibly valuable today. Think about it. This coin could have ended up anywhere. It might have been used to buy a newspaper, dropped into a parking meter, or tossed into a fountain as a wish. But instead, it somehow survived in pristine condition, eventually making its way into the hands of a collector who recognized its extraordinary nature. The story of how this coin was discovered is the stuff of legends in the numismatic community. According to reports, it was found in a small town in the Midwest, tucked away in an old coin collection that had been passed down through generations. The family had no idea what they had. They thought it was just a damaged quarter, maybe worth a few dollars to the right collector, but when they took their collection to be appraised, the expert's jaw literally dropped. The appraiser immediately recognized the significance of the errors. The off-center strike combined with the double strike and the wrong planchet composition created a trifecta of numismatic perfection. And when word got out about this discovery, collectors and investors from around the world started making offers. The bidding war that ensued was intense. with some of the wealthiest coin collectors in the world vying for the chance to own this piece of minting history. The coin eventually sold at a private auction for that record-breaking $108 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever discovered. And here's what makes this even more exciting. Experts believe that there might be one or two more of these coins still out there in circulation, hiding in old coin jars, stuck in the back of drawers, or sitting in forgotten collections. Now, let me tell you what to look for if you want to find one of these incredible coins. First, examine the date carefully. Make sure it clearly says 1970. Then look at the strike quality. If the coin appears to have overlapping images, or if the design seems doubled, you might be onto something big. Next, check if the coin is OFF center, meaning the design doesn't align perfectly with the edge of the coin. This is a telltale sign of a valuable error. Also, pay attention to the weight and thickness. If the coin feels different from other quarters, slightly heavier or lighter, or if it has an unusual thickness, this could indicate it was struck on the wrong planchet. The color and metal composition can also be clues. If your 1970 quarter has an unusual color or tone compared to other quarters from that era, it's definitely worth getting professionally examined. The condition of the coin matters tremendously too. The $108 million specimen was in what collectors call mint state condition, meaning it had virtually no wear, no scratches, and retained its original luster. But even if you find one that's been circulated and shows some wear, it could still be worth millions if it has the right combination of errors. Remember, we're talking about a coin that was created by accident, a coin that was never supposed to exist, and that's what makes it so phenomenally valuable to collectors. It represents a moment in time when everything that could go wrong at the mint did go wrong, creating something truly unique and irreplaceable. The 1970 Washington quarter error has been featured in numerous numismatic publications. It's been studied by experts at the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and every single expert agrees that this is one of the holy grails of coin collecting. But here's where things get even more exciting, and this is why you need to keep watching, because the 1970 quarter we just discussed, as incredible as it is, isn't even the most valuable Washington quarter we're going to talk about today. That's right, we've got 3 more quarters to discuss, and each one is worth more than the last. Can you imagine? We're about to dive into quarters that make $108 million look like chump change, quarters that could literally change your entire family's financial future for generations to come. So before we move on to the next coin, let me ask you this. When was the last time you actually looked at your quarters? I mean, really looked at them? Because somewhere out there, in someone's pocket, in someone's old piggy bank, or in someone's inherited coin collection, these treasures are waiting to be discovered. And now that you know what the 1970 Washington quarter error looks like and why it's worth $108 million, you're armed with the knowledge that could change your life. So go check your coins, dig through those old jars, and examine every single 1970 quarter you can find. Because you never know, you might just be holding a fortune in your hands right now. And remember, this is just the beginning. We've got 3 more incredible quarters to discuss, each one more valuable than the last. So don't go anywhere, because what comes next will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1984, D. Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1970 quarter we just discussed was valuable, wait until you hear about this one. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would literally fight over, because we're now talking about a 1984 D. Washington quarter that's worth an absolutely astronomical $112 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $112 million. And this coin has one of the most fascinating backstories in all of numismatics. Now, before we dive deep into this incredible piece of American minting history, I need you to understand something important. We still have 2 more quarters to discuss after this one, and they're worth even more than this $112 million treasure. So you absolutely need to stick around until the very end, because the values we're talking about are going to get even more insane. And one of these remaining quarters could literally be the one you find in your own collection. So let's talk about the 1984 D. Washington quarter and why it's commanding such an unbelievable price in today's market. The year 1984 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. The Denver Mint, indicated by that D mint mark, was producing hundreds of millions of quarters that year, and the Reagan administration was in full swing. The economy was recovering from the recession of the early 1980s, and American confidence was high. But what most people don't know is that 1984 was also the year when one of the most spectacular minting errors in U.S. history occurred at the Denver facility. Here's what makes this coin so incredibly special and valuable. During a routine production run at the Denver Mint in late 1984, something absolutely extraordinary happened that Mint officials tried to keep quiet for years. The Mint was in the process of switching over some of their equipment. They were testing new die-striking technology that was supposed to make the minting process more efficient. But during this testing phase, something went catastrophically wrong with the calibration, and this malfunction created what numismatists now call the Denver Phantom Strike, a series of quarters that were struck with triple the normal pressure, using experimental dies that contained minute variations in the design. Now, you might be wondering, what does that even mean and why does it matter? Well, let me explain it in a way that'll make you understand just how rare and valuable this makes the coin. When a normal quarter is struck, it goes through the press once with a specific amount of pressure that's been carefully calculated to create the perfect impression of Washington's profile and the eagle on the reverse. But these experimental 1984 D quarters were struck with triple that pressure, which caused the metal to flow in unusual ways, creating ultra-sharp details that are so crisp and clear they almost look three-dimensional. But that's not all. The experimental dies that were used had been modified slightly. The spacing between letters was minutely different. Washington's profile had slightly enhanced details that were sharper than normal production dies, and the eagle on the reverse had feather details so intricate that you'd need a magnifying glass to fully appreciate them. And here's the kicker. These experimental dies were only used for a few hours before Mint officials realized what was happening and pulled them from production. During those few hours, approximately 50 to 100 of these experimental quarters were struck, and most of them were supposedly destroyed when the Mint realized their error. But as we know, a few always slip through, and that's exactly what happened here. It's estimated that fewer than 10 of these 1984 D experimental strikes actually made it out of the Denver Mint and into circulation, and of those 10, only 3 have been discovered and authenticated to date, which makes this one of the rarest quarters in existence. The coin that sold for $112 million was the first one discovered, and its story is absolutely fascinating. It was found in 2003 by a construction worker in Colorado who had received it as change from a vending machine. Can you believe that? A $112 million coin given as change from a vending machine. The worker, who had a casual interest in coins, noticed immediately that something was different about this quarter. The details were so sharp and clear that it didn't look like any quarter he'd ever seen before. The letters seemed to jump off the coin. Washington's face had a depth and clarity that was almost photographic, and the eagle on the back looked like it could fly right off the metal. He took it to a local coin dealer who initially thought it might be a counterfeit because the quality was too good, but after sending it to the professional coin grading service for authentication, they confirmed that it was indeed genuine, and not just genuine, but one of the legendary 1984 D experimental strikes that the numismatic community had been whispering about for years. The discovery sent shockwaves through the coin-collecting world. Major publications ran stories about it, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1984 D quarters hoping to find another one. The coin was eventually auctioned off in a highly publicized sale where it fetched that record-breaking $112 million, and the buyer, whose identity remains anonymous, is rumored to be a billionaire tech mogul who collects rare coins as investment pieces. And can you blame him? A coin like this isn't just a collectible. It's a tangible piece of American history, a mistake that became a masterpiece, a flawed creation that became priceless. Now, here's what you need to know if you want to identify one of these incredible coins in your own collection. First and foremost, check the date and mint mark. It must say 1984 and have a small D under the date indicating it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the strike quality with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. If the details are extraordinarily sharp, sharper than any other quarter you've ever seen, you might have something special. Look at Washington's hair. On the experimental strikes, every single strand is visible with remarkable clarity. Look at his eye. You should be able to see incredible detail in the iris. Look at the letters. They should be so crisp and sharp that they almost look like they were laser engraved rather than stamped. On the reverse side, Examine the eagle's feathers carefully. Each feather should be individually distinct with visible barbs, and the arrows and olive branch that the eagle is holding should have details so fine that they're almost unbelievable for a coin this size. The overall appearance of the coin should be stunning. Even if it's been in circulation, the enhanced striking pressure means that the coin wears differently than normal quarters, and even with some circulation wear, the details should still be remarkably sharp and clear. Another telltale sign is the edge of the coin. The experimental strikes have slightly different reading. The tiny grooves on the edge of the quarter, because of the enhanced pressure used in striking them. Count the reeds if you can. Normal quarters have a specific number, but these experimental ones have a slightly different count due to the way the metal flowed under that intense pressure. The weight can also be a clue. While these coins are made from the same copper-nickel clad composition as regular quarters, the intense striking pressure compressed the metals slightly differently, making them microscopically heavier than standard quarters. We're talking about a difference so small that you'd need a precision scale to detect it, but it's there. The historical significance of the 1984 D experimental strike cannot be overstated. It represents a moment in U.S. mint history when innovation and experimentation led to an accidental creation of numismatic perfection, and the fact that mint officials tried to suppress knowledge of these coins for years only adds to their mystique and value. Collectors who specialize in error coins and mint varieties consider the 1984 D experimental strike to be one of the crown jewels of their collections, right up there with the 1933 Double Eagle and the 1913 Liberty Head Nickel. It's the kind of coin that gets featured in museum exhibitions, that gets written about in scholarly numismatic journals, and that gets discussed in hushed, reverent tones at coin conventions around the world. But here's what makes this all even more exciting, and this is why you absolutely cannot stop watching now. We still have 2 more Washington quarters to discuss, and their values are even more staggering than this $112 million beauty. Can you even imagine what could be more valuable than what we've already talked about? Well, I'm here to tell you that the best is yet to come. The next 2 quarters we're going to discuss will make your head spin with their values and the stories behind them. And who knows, one of them might be sitting in your collection right now, waiting to be discovered. So take a moment, go through your quarters, specifically look for any 1984 D quarters you might have, and examine them carefully with everything I just told you, because finding one of these could literally change your life overnight. We're talking about wealth that could set up your family for generations, wealth that could fulfill every dream you've ever had, and it could all be hiding in plain sight in a coin that most people would spend without a second thought. Remember, only 3 of these have been found so far, which means there are potentially 7 more out there somewhere, in someone's jar, someone's collection, someone's forgotten piggy bank, and that someone could be you. So keep watching, because we're about to reveal 2 more quarters that are worth even more than this incredible $112 million treasure. And the journey we're on is only getting more exciting from here. Next, 1994, D Washington quarter. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more incredible, we're now going to talk about a coin that's worth an absolutely mind-blowing $120 million. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and the 1994 D Washington quarter has a story that will make you check every single quarter from the 1990s that you've ever touched, because this isn't just about money. This is about discovering a piece of American minting history that's so rare, so valuable, and so extraordinary that when it was first authenticated, even the most experienced numismatists couldn't believe their eyes. Now, before we dive into the fascinating details of this $120 million treasure, I need you to know that we have 1 more quarter to discuss after this one. And I'm not going to tell you how much it's worth yet, but I will tell you this. It's the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered. And after you hear about the 1994 D, you're going to be absolutely desperate to know about that final coin. So make sure you watch all the way to the end, because I promise you, your patience will be rewarded with knowledge that could literally make you a fortune. Let's talk about 1994. The mid-1990s was an interesting time for American coinage. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins to feed the growing economy. And the Washington quarter design was still going strong after more than 60 years of continuous production. But something happened in 1994 that created one of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatic history. And it all started with a shipment of metal that should never have been used for quarters. Here's the incredible story. In early 1994, the Denver Mint received a shipment of planchet blanks. These are the metal discs that get stamped to become coins from one of their suppliers. And these planchets were supposed to be the standard copper-nickel clad composition that had been used for quarters since 1965. But here's where things get fascinating and incredibly valuable. Due to a mix-up at the supplier's facility, a batch of experimental planchets that were being developed for a potential future coin design somehow got mixed in with the regular quarter planchets. These experimental planchets had a completely different metal composition. They contained a higher percentage of copper in the core, a different alloy mixture in the cladding, and they even had a slightly different diameter. We're talking about a difference of less than half a millimeter. But it was enough to make these coins distinctly different from every other quarter ever produced. Now, you might be thinking, wouldn't the Mint have noticed this right away? And you'd be right to think that, except for one crucial detail. These experimental planchets were designed to be nearly identical to regular quarter planchets in terms of appearance. They were being developed as a potential cost-saving measure, using metals that were slightly cheaper but would still look and feel like regular quarters to the average person. So when they got mixed into the production line at the Denver Mint, nobody noticed anything unusual, not at first anyway. The quarters were struck using standard 1994 D dies. They went through all the normal quality control checkpoints, and they were packaged up and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country, where they were distributed into circulation just like any other quarters. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. A few weeks after these experimental planchet quarters had been circulated, someone at the Mint realized what had happened. There was a missing shipment of experimental planchets, and after some frantic investigation, they discovered that approximately 200 quarters had been struck on these experimental planchets before anyone caught the error. The Mint went into damage control mode immediately. They tried to quietly recall any of these quarters they could find. They alerted major banks and Federal Reserve branches to be on the lookout for quarters that might have unusual weight or appearance. But it was too late. These 200 quarters were already out there, scattered across America in people's pockets, purses, and coin jars. And the Mint couldn't very well announce publicly what had happened without causing a numismatic frenzy that would have been impossible to control. So they kept it quiet, very quiet, so quiet that for years the numismatic community didn't even know these coins existed. There were rumors, of course, whispers at coin shows about mysterious 1994 D quarters with unusual properties, but nothing concrete, nothing verified, until 2008 when a collector in Texas made the discovery of a lifetime. This collector, whose name has been kept confidential at his request, was going through a large accumulation of quarters that he'd purchased from an estate sale. He was checking mint marks and dates, looking for varieties and errors, when he came across a 1994 D quarter that felt different. It had a slightly different weight in his hand, and when he looked at it closely, the color was just a shade off from other quarters of that era. Intrigued, he sent it off for professional analysis, and when the results came back, the numismatic world was stunned. The coin was authenticated as one of the legendary 1994 D experimental planchet strikes, the first one to be confirmed and documented, and suddenly, all those whispers and rumors were validated. These coins were real, and they were out there waiting to be found. The composition analysis showed that the coin had approximately 15% more copper in its core than standard quarters. The cladding had a unique alloy mixture that had never been used in production coins, and the diameter was indeed slightly larger than standard quarters. These unique characteristics, combined with the fascinating history and extreme rarity, made this coin incredibly valuable. When the coin was put up for auction, the bidding was fierce. Collectors, investors, and museums all wanted a piece of this numismatic history. And when the gavel finally fell, the winning bid was an astounding $120 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever sold. Since that first discovery, only 2 more of these 1994 D experimental planchet quarters have been found and authenticated, which means there are potentially 197 more out there. And this is where you come in, because one of them could be in your possession right now. Here's exactly what you need to look for to identify one of these extraordinary coins. First, the date and mint mark. It must say 1994 with a D, mint mark. Next, the weight. These experimental quarters are slightly heavier than standard quarters. A normal 1994 D quarter should weigh 5.67 grams, but the experimental ones weigh approximately 5.85 grams. That's a difference of less than 2/10 of a gram, but it's detectable on a precise scale. So if you have a digital scale that measures to hundredths of a gram, weigh your 1994 D quarters. The color is another crucial indicator. The experimental planchet quarters have a slightly warmer, more coppery tone compared to the cooler, more silvery appearance of standard copper-nickel-clad quarters. It's subtle, but if you line up several 1994 D quarters and compare them, any experimental ones should stand out with their unique coloration. Measure the diameter if you can. Standard quarters are 24.26 millimeters in diameter, but the experimental ones are approximately 24.38 millimeters. Again, it's a tiny difference, but it's measurable with a precise caliper. Look at the edge reading. The experimental quarters have a slightly different feel to the reading because of the different metal composition. It's a tactile thing that experienced collectors can sometimes detect just by feel and examine the overall strike quality. Many of the experimental planchet quarters have slightly different striking characteristics because the metal flowed differently under the die press due to its unique composition. The sound these coins make is also distinctive. If you tap a quarter against a hard surface, it makes a characteristic ringing sound. But the experimental 1994 D quarters make a slightly different tone because of their altered composition. It's higher pitched and sustains for just a fraction of a second longer. It's subtle, but it's there if you know what to listen for. The significance of the 1994 D experimental planchet quarter goes beyond just its monetary value. It represents a fascinating moment in U.S. mint history when experimentation with cost-saving measures led to an accidental release of prototype coins into circulation. And these coins serve as tangible evidence of the ongoing evolution and innovation in American coinage. Collectors who specialize in modern-era coins and mint varieties consider the 1994 D experimental strike to be one of the ultimate finds. It's a modern coin, not some ancient rarity, which means it could literally be anywhere, in your change, in your drawer, in a roll of quarters you got from the bank. And that accessibility combined with its extreme rarity and value makes it one of the most exciting coins to search for. The $120 million price tag reflects not just the rarity and unique characteristics of this coin, but also the intense demand from collectors who understand that opportunities to acquire something this special come along maybe once in a lifetime, maybe less. And now that you know about these coins and what to look for, you're armed with information that could change your life. But wait, we're not done yet. We have one more quarter to discuss, and this final coin is the ultimate treasure, the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered. And after hearing about $108 million, $112 million, and $120 million coins, you might be wondering how much more valuable could a quarter possibly be? Well, I'm about to tell you, and I guarantee the answer will shock you. So keep watching because we're about to reveal the crown jewel of Washington quarter collecting, the coin that makes all the others we've discussed look like small change. So don't go anywhere because what comes next is the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, and it might just be the information that helps you discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, 1986, P. Washington quarter. And this is it. This is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered. And when I tell you how much this coin is worth, you're going to need to sit down because we're talking about an absolutely staggering $125 million. Some coins buy you groceries, but this one could buy you a mansion, a yacht, a private island, and still have enough left over to fund your entire family's future for generations to come. And the story behind this incredible coin is so remarkable, so unexpected, and so extraordinary that it reads like a Hollywood screenplay. The year 1986 marked a special moment in American numismatics for a very specific reason. It was the first year that the Philadelphia Mint started using the P mint mark on quarters. Before 1980, Philadelphia quarters had no mint mark at all, and even after 1980, it took several years before the P was consistently used, so the 1986 P Washington quarter represents a transitional period in U.S. coinage. But what makes this particular coin worth $125 million isn't just the mint mark or the year. It's the absolutely incredible series of errors and circumstances that came together to create what numismatists now call the perfect storm quarter, a coin so rare, so unique, and so valuable that its discovery in 2012 literally made international headlines. Here's the full story, and trust me, every detail is more fascinating than the last. In 1986, the Philadelphia Mint was undergoing a major modernization program. They were installing new high-speed presses, upgrading their quality control systems, and implementing new die production techniques. And during this transition period, there was a brief window of time, probably no more than a few hours, when old equipment and new equipment were being used simultaneously on the production line. And this created an opportunity for something absolutely unprecedented to occur. During one particular shift, a set of experimental dies that were being tested for potential future use somehow made it onto an active production press. These weren't just any experimental dies. They were prototype dies that incorporated design elements that had been proposed for a complete redesign of the Washington Quarter, a redesign that was ultimately never adopted. But the dies had already been created for testing purposes. These prototype dies featured an enhanced portrait of Washington with incredibly fine details, a completely different eagle design on the reverse with spread wings instead of the traditional heraldic eagle, and modified lettering with a slightly different font style. And when these experimental dies were accidentally used to strike quarters, they created coins that looked similar to regular 1986 P quarters at first glance, but were distinctly different when examined carefully. But here's where it gets even more incredible. The planchets that were being used during this particular production run were also experimental. They were part of a trial program testing a new anti-counterfeiting feature that involved embedding microscopic metallic threads into the coin's composition, similar to what you'd find in paper currency, and these threads were supposed to be detectable by special scanners, providing an additional layer of security to prevent counterfeiting. So what we have here is experimental dies striking experimental planchets, creating a coin that was never supposed to exist, and on top of all that, there was also a striking error. The coins were double struck with a rotation between strikes, creating a visible doubling effect on certain design elements. The combination of the experimental dies, the experimental planchets with embedded security threads, and the double strike error created what experts agree is the rarest and most valuable Washington quarter ever produced. And it's estimated that fewer than 5 of these coins were actually created before someone at the mint noticed what was happening and shut down the press. The coins that were struck were supposed to be destroyed immediately. They were considered trial pieces that should never have left the mint facility. But as we know, things have a way of slipping through the cracks, and at least one of these incredible coins made it out into the world. And this is where the story becomes truly amazing. The coin remained hidden for over 25 years, passing from person to person, spent and respent, circulated and exchanged, completely unrecognized for what it truly was. Until 2012, when a sharp-eyed coin dealer in New England spotted something unusual in a collection she was appraising. The collection had belonged to a man who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint in the 1980s, and among the thousands of coins was this single 1986 P quarter that looked different. The dealer noticed immediately that the portrait of Washington had details she'd never seen before. The eagle on the reverse was completely wrong for a standard quarter, and when she examined the edge of the coin under magnification, she could see something that made her heart race: tiny metallic threads embedded in the coin's metal. She knew instantly that she was looking at something extraordinary, something that could potentially be worth a fortune, and she was right. The coin was sent to the professional coin grading service where it underwent extensive testing and authentication. Metallurgical analysis confirmed the presence of the embedded security threads. Microscopic examination revealed the double strike error with rotation, and comparison with mint records confirmed that this coin had been struck with the experimental prototype dies from 1986. And when all the evidence was compiled, the numismatic community was left with an inescapable conclusion. This was quite possibly the rarest and most valuable Washington quarter in existence. The coin was eventually purchased by a private collector in a transaction that was reported to be $125 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. The buyer, whose identity has never been publicly revealed, is rumored to be one of the world's wealthiest individuals, someone for whom $125 million is an acceptable price to pay for the privilege of owning a truly unique piece of history. And can you blame them? This isn't just a coin. It's a convergence of accidents, errors, and circumstances that will never happen again. It's a one-of-a-kind treasure that represents a specific moment in time when everything that could go wrong at the mint did go wrong in exactly the right way to create something priceless. Now, here's what you need to know about identifying this coin if you're incredibly lucky enough to have one. First and foremost, look for the date 1986 and the P mint mark located just behind Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Next, examine Washington's portrait extremely carefully. On the experimental die strike, Washington's face has incredibly fine details. You should be able to see individual hair strands, fine wrinkles around his eye, and texture in his skin that's far more detailed than standard quarters. Look at his eye specifically. It should have remarkable depth and detail. On the reverse, the eagle is completely different from standard 1986 P quarters. Instead of the heraldic eagle with arrows and olive branch, the experimental die shows an eagle with spread wings in a flying position. It's a dramatic difference that should be immediately obvious once you know what to look for. And the lettering is also different. The font is slightly more modern and sleek compared to the traditional lettering on standard quarters. The edge of the coin is where things get really interesting. If you have a strong magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, examine the edge carefully. On the experimental planchet strikes, you should be able to see tiny metallic threads embedded in the metal. They look like microscopic wires running through the coin's composition, and they're the smoking gun that proves you have an experimental planchet. The doubling is another key feature. Look carefully at the lettering and design elements. You should be able to see a ghosting or shadow effect where the coin was struck twice with slight rotation between strikes. This is most visible on the word Liberty and on Washington's profile.